Hi, everyone. Welcome to. I don't know if we every month, but okay. Yeah. We're gonna move along. We're already running a little late.
Okay, I'm on now. Okay, sorry.
However,
I just wanted to thank Ms. Ratner for running the meeting on my behalf today. I had some oral surgery and I had gauze in my mouth and it's really hard. So I thank her so much.
Well, we hope you feel better. I've lived those days.
yes.
Thank you.
I think oral pain is the worst pain.
Yeah.
All right, so moving along, we're going to start with the policies that we didn't cover last month. I think we'll do 2365 after that, I
Yep, I
guess, because
agree.
the rest are on that other alert.
5200 is the first one,
All
right?
right, yep, so we're going to look at regulation. It is actually 5200,
Yep.
which is the attendance regulation, which was a revision from Strauss Esme.
Correct.
All right.
Looks like it was mostly just changes in language.
It is. And it's mandatory, so we like to just move forward. A lot of the language that's removed tends to be,
Generalization.
correct. Like, explaining things and they want to, instead of having to include that, not including but not limited to, they just take it all out so that it includes everything.
Right.
I see they did add in here.
A civic event,
attendance
right.
at a civic
I saw
event.
That's what
Which is
the
nice for-
alert had shared that.
Yeah.
Which is
grades
good.
6 through 12, so for the public, it's a civic event is an event sponsored by a government entity, community-based organization, or nonprofit that incorporates elements of student learning. That basically the policy is saying that it would be considered an excused absence and you could provide, a parent provides documentation
Right, and
that
then,
they attended.
correct. And then
D1, right?
D1 is
That's what I
asking
wanted
for, and I
to-
want to go back to our previous.
Regulation 5200.
It's the attendance fund.
Okay, thank you.
D is the amount of days,
Correct.
which I felt like would be good to highlight for public knowledge. There's a lot that comes with policy, a lot of papers.
Yes.
And so, do you have it? I have it here. Do you
Yeah,
want-
I was just looking for it.
All right, I have it right here.
I think it has to be filled in.
It does.
Right,
It's blank.
where's, oh, of course I didn't have the revised, but it's, all
Here.
right, you see it, you wanna read it?
So
I got it here. All right, I got it. So D1, D, readmission to school after an absence. Number 1 is a student returning from an absence of blank consecutive school days. And then you have to check off may or will be required to provide a written statement to the principal or designee that is dated and signed by the parent or adult student listing the reason for the absence.
Okay. So on the prior one, did you find it? Because I found it too.
End of it here, it's a readmission to school after an absence, is that it?
Yes, and it just says any. So in this, did you see that?
Any length
Yeah.
of time.
Any
must
length of
provide a
time. So it
written
said a student returning from an absence of any length of time must provide a written statement to the principal or designee.
Okay, I thought I was missing it because
No, you are
is there a
missing it.
number?
So there was no number. So what it's asking now is in the change, it's asking us, do we want to provide a number? So, if I can give a little history quickly on this?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've been here forever.
Mhm.
So this, it used to be we followed the state guidelines. And even if you were sick and a doctor's note, technically, there was really no such thing as an excused absence. It had nothing to do with even medical note. It was just what was listed by the state. Certain holidays, certain things. So yes, it was a notification of why you were absent, but it wasn't truly excused. The policy then changed, because I had this conversation recently with Dr. Higgins, because it's the middle of high school, really. And what happened was under prior superintendents, and I don't think it was the one before me, I think it was 2 before, 1 or 2 before the
Yeah.
prior superintendent, if you recall. It then became anything was acceptable. So parents actually go into Genesis and actually mark their child. I see you shaking your hand because you're mommies, which is good.
Yeah.
Mark their child. So the conversation then comes, if you're absent more than a certain amount of days, you can lose credit because credit completion is required in high school.
Right.
So it's like we're having multiple conversations because the true place that it really makes a difference is high school.
Mhm.
So when I see this, my concern is that if we put in a number, I think that this is a conversation we need to have, but I think that we need to go back to the other policy and look, and I know it's not on here because this is regulation that's mandatory.
Right.
The policy that states the amount of days. Did you know how we talk about 10%, like 180 days?
Right,
So that's my concern. Now, the old language, if you'll see, didn't have it, said any length of time must be provided written.
Right.
Now they actually go into, and I don't know if you want to explain it a little bit, because I know that you're both parents here.
Right,
the
well,
way it
you
works
go
with
into Genesis and you mark that your student was
Correct.
absent, the
Correct.
reason why. And then the
Correct.
school, I think it's the secretary, it might be someone else, will usually acknowledge it once you
The tenants,
put it
right.
into Genesis, that your child will be absent. But, I also know, I've never luckily had to deal with this, but if you hit a certain number of
What did
days,
that say, 6 and then 10, I believe.
right, I think at 10 days, you're like, if you are not in school for 10 over 10 days, like, I know there are some students that leave the country.
Well, that has changed. You
Okay,
cannot just withdraw somebody.
okay,
We spoke to an attorney and we're following the proper, that changed under me. I reached out to the attorney to confirm, because that was the way it had always been done. You
right,
cannot just disenroll someone.
Right, they have to be absent for 10, more than.
And even
10
if they
days.
are, then you have to notify the parent and you have to get confirmation. Even if they leave the country, we no longer can just disenroll them. We do suggest what makes sense, what's best for the child. So I think there's a lot of conversation. I think it's good that this is our, first read as far as committee is concerned. I know that Ms. Alvarez isn't feeling well, but I know that, she has a policy chair. I would like to look at this as an opportunity to have conversations if a student returning from absence. In the past, we always used it I know for adults, we've always said on the 5th day or the 6th day. So it's after 5 days.
right.
I mean, I'm comfortable with us coming up with our own number,
Mhm.
but I do think it's something that we need to look at. Like I said, it plays more of a role at the high school level than any other level.
I also would like
Because of
to
credit
get
completion.
clarification, is this in lieu of Genesis, is this Genesis, because it says a written statement to the principal, is that more than just
So,
clarification in Genesis?
Just to let you know, the original intention was a written note. Over the years, I will let you know that it has been acceptable that the writing in Genesis, I will not speak for all the principals, but that has been the prior acceptance, I think is the right term. So I think it's good that you're bringing that up, because I think we should be consistent.
Yeah.
Are we requiring a separate note to be sent in with the child at elementary level and then
Right.
brought in? Are we saying that what's put in Genesis is permitted? And at what point are we going to say, in the other one, it's so open-ended by saying any.
Right,
So
and
that
then
means each
if you
principal
don't
can-
put it in right now, like you're in violation of policy, but if we say 5 days here.
Correct.
Then you're not giving the school notice necessarily, which you're not supposed to do either, because then it could be considered being truant, so like, I just want to make
I
sure
don't
we're
disagree.
consistent.
I think that this is a good thing, because we need to come up with, I think whatever decision's made that's appropriate, of course, we can always, you know how the rule is, you have to do at least what the state requires, but you can do more.
Right,
But I think we have to be consistent. I would be my pleasure to have that conversation in leadership for all 8 schools. I know the high school's credit completion, the high school is always different in that regard, but K through 8th, we need to have that conversation.
right, and maybe we can add that parents should send in, like, or should communicate via Genesis. However, if there's a certain number of days, then we require an additional step. But I'm not really sure legally, because this was something that came down from Josh Esme. If we can add to this, that there should be 2 steps, if that makes sense.
So I'm just,
Yeah.
so if you'll look at the old regulation, there was no blanks, and for purposes of the public, what does blank mean? So when you were given a policy or a regulation, they gave you the verbiage, the language. And the statements were made. And if it was mandatory, we always accept it. If it's not mandatory, we make the decision. So I want them to understand when I say blanks. Now, under the regulation guide, it gives you a space so that you can enter a number. 3 days, 5 days, 6 days. That is new in this particular regulation. We have been seeing it in other regulations,
Yeah.
but we haven't seen it here before. So I wanted the public who's not here to know what we're talking about.
Should we?
I think have a conversation. Let's.
Right.
Table that continues.
And then I'll be happy
For next month.
with, Ms. Alvarez, if she agrees, and of course, Ms. Mary Ellen. Ms. Ratner, I think.
Yes, I agree.
A very good conversation for my leadership, my first leadership meeting, I think would be an excellent conversation. Because now that the state is giving you the line, they're giving more ability for our decision-making in the amount of days. And I think it's very important conversation Ms. Ratner brought up, very important. Are we living in the real world of technology and saying the statement that you write in Genesis stands for the written return letter? Or are we saying, no, it doesn't? And I'm not making a decision either way, because it's the committee's decision. My recommendation would be, part of me feels like it's almost no, moot. It's almost moot. We're requiring a separate letter, but everything is technology now, and we have the Genesis, so.
Right, why have this
Right.
duplicate
Yeah,
process?
Right, but if you'll notice, if you continue on in the regulation, it doesn't go away. There's lots of
Yeah,
optional, and there's lots of spaces. Teachers will cooperate in the preparation of home assignments for students who anticipate an absence of.
yeah,
The other thing we don't do right now is if a child is going out, we don't require our staff to provide work.
right.
Do we provide them to allow them to make up the work when they return? Yes, but we don't provide the work in advance. So I think this brings up a lot of questions
Right.
that,
I also know being a parent, because we aren't required to provide work, that I know every teacher chooses what's best for them,
Correct.
but there are some teachers who will not provide
that's
the work,
correct.
and they're not required to do so.
Correct.
But do we want that available as an option if students want to get the work, so if they're gone for a certain number of days, they're not falling behind, so.
And then that's a conversation when we look at the requirements as per the MTA agreement.
Right.
What does that mean? So the reason why I didn't come with answers intentionally was because this is a good conversation. And then I wanted to get the take from the chair and of course, vice chair and president to say, yes, Dr. Chandler, I agree with you. Let's move forward, because this then allows me to have that educational conversation with the administrative team to say, rationally and logically, what do we see are positives about it? What do we see can be, because we can't just turn around and say, all work will be provided to a child who's absent 3 days or more. We have to look at the MCA agreement, because our agreement, and we know because you're all teachers who are all in the field of education, as I'm talking to all of you, and you are, I believe, I'm not mistaken. Oh, no, you don't. So we want to make sure that whatever we put forth in policy. So I'm comfortable, if you want to move on, taking this back and having some in-depth conversations and bringing it back to the next meeting to have the conversations about it.
Yeah, I think that's fine, and get recommendations.
I think it's
Would
a
be best,
good
and we can
idea.
decide.
And
from
I'd like
there.
consistency. We have 6 elementary schools, all 6 elementary schools
Right.
should be following the same guidelines and policy.
To
And-
that note, would next month be considered a first read, or would it be the second read? Because
I
we
think a
really,
first read.
Yeah.
We're not really making, we're not.
Right.
It would be first read. We're not moving it forward yet to the full board.
This will not even be placed on the, right, because that'll give me an opportunity in September. I already have it in the plans, it's immediate.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it makes sense, because we want to do it right, and we haven't really looked at it, and like I said, I've been here, and we want to make sure that it makes sense, and high school's a separate conversation completely.
So
Yeah.
both of the 5,200 feet,
Yep.
right?
right. So it's regulation 5,200. So what you see there is the original one.
Yep.
And then when it says revised, that's with the updates that stress SMA recommends. And if there's the blanks, then those are things that we decide for what's best for our district.
So I
Okay.
will do that,
All right.
my pleasure.
Next is policy 5337, which is another revision for service animals. So I'll pull up the chair.
It's just a lot of changes in
Yep,
language and
horses
like
off.
condensing the wording.
We don't have to make any decisions. That's
No.
No.
Actually, it makes sense, it just lessened it,
Yeah,
it was very,
yeah,
and that's it, so,
Yeah.
makes sense,
right.
Next.
Does anyone have anything about 5337? It's pretty
straightforward.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
Ms. Alvarez, you're good?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes, yes, I'm good.
Okay.
All right, 5350, student suicide prevention.
Same thing.
Very important topic.
This is very important,
Yes.
and it's a lot of changes in language.
Which one are we?
This is
53,
policy,
50.
yeah,
Say
it's
again,
the
sorry.
student,
5350.
5350. Okay, thanks.
student suicide prevention.
Okay.
And the only changes,
Right. So it includes new statute sections for
Correct.
training requirements
we
for
do.
staff members.
which we do,
The requirement for staff that to be trained to warn, protect when they have information that students
Correct.
harm themselves, and a requirement to notify all staff who are required to be trained in accordance with the statute of the district's reporting and suicide prevention, awareness, and response protocols.
and what we do is, so we have all new teachers to the district. It could be 20 years, but if you're new to our district, we do this with part of our in-service and training. And then there is a requirement as per the state every 5 years. And we have our vector system, which allows us, so we keep up on this. We handle this very well for our staff development. We make sure everything's done, not just because of policy, because it's what's best for children. We're very passionate about this. And the only thing just for the community that's watching, so it is identical. The only thing that was removed is an entire paragraph that says any school district staff member, volunteer, or intern, reasonable cause to suspect or believe a student has attempted. That entire paragraph has been removed because of the verbiage that's been added in bold.
Yeah.
on the very bottom. So I think this is just it's mandatory as it should be. And we make sure that nobody, in order for no child to fall through the cracks, no adult can fall through the cracks in their training, because that's where the responsibility lies. And anybody that has a question, we have fabulous child study teams in all of our schools. And when there is never, whenever there's a doubt, you always err on the side of God forbid, and you take appropriate protocol and procedure. So I feel very good. I know that this is an area of expertise that you happen to deal with, Ms. Alvarez.
Yes.
So I wanted to add.
And just for the public to know that the policy is one thing, but each school or the school as a whole has their own protocol for when a child says something, that's concerning, and the steps that need to be followed in order for them to be able to return to school.
That's correct. So we have a crisis team. We have, the teams meet on a regular basis. They have those conversations, and nothing is ever taken lightly. So even if it's first grade drawing, if it's a conversation that they have, if it's playtime, everything is examined. And that's why I think the training is so important. I mean, we have become, especially since COVID, before COVID also, but especially since COVID, we have become so where I'm looking to sensitive to there is no more comments. So there's no such thing as saying kids will be kids or saying they're robot. We take everything that we hear or see, because it may be something visual. It could be a child in a drawing. And we always err on the side of let's take that next step. So Ms. Salvage, you're absolutely correct. All the schools have procedure and protocol. And then of course the district has policy.
Is the protocol and procedure for each elementary school consistent with the other, like all
Yes.
6 of them
It's all
are the same?
consistent, yes.
Okay.
It's all consistent.
And then, I mean, I know, we're talking about little kids, but sadly this can happen at any age.
Any age.
I know that there's a lot of programs for parents at like the upper levels about a lot of these things. Do we do anything at the elementary school about this? I don't remember.
I know
but-
many years ago, what was it called? Academy, not Khan Academy, what was the other one? This is going back like 10 years ago. Oh, gosh, it was something Academy for parents. And it was something that we offered. This is going back a long time ago, so
I
I'm.
think it's before me.
Yeah, probably. As of right now, I know that, I will have this conversation in general regarding back to school nights, because we have a meeting before back to school night. But I believe that we always are providing the parents with where our resources are located. That's why I'm so excited about this website changing, because our website desperately needs it. Because of resources, just like, harassment, intimidation, bullying. I don't know anything about it. Well, let me tell you as a parent, where you go on our website. So I will confirm, with Dr. Lehman that, this availability of resources is also easily accessible on our website, which I would believe it should be. I think it is actually there, but I think it's always good. It's good to have this conversation because we don't want to make assumptions. We always want to make sure that everything is fresh and available. So I will do that.
I do remember, and I'm trying to find it right now on our website, there was around COVID time, a really fantastic website created by the district. I think it was several staff members that put it together.
I remember that. I started
can't
in middle
find-
school, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, I can't find it.
Okay, I can look into
But
it.
it definitely had a lot of helpful information that would be good to share. If-
Well, right, so you think of like resources, so if someone needs help and they're utilizing, Children and Family Services, if they're utilizing, Jewish Federation that has a lot of services that's utilized in Middlesex County.
Mhm.
So we always want to be able to provide services to our parents that may need them, so I can take care of that.
It was right,
I just want to, I remember, because I was principal, I thought it was middle school started it, and then
it's possible it started there, but.
And then it
was
branched
like
out.
A
Right.
project there that branched out, because I remember getting email about it at the elementary school level, because I
So-
wasn't up there yet.
What I'll do is I'll do attendance, so these are good, excellent topics, and it's very appropriate because the school year is beginning.
Right.
So we have an opportunity, but I definitely think that we should move forward with the first read. So this will go on with everybody's approval.
Sounds good.
And then suicide prevention and the use of facilities we brought back again.
Right,
So-
oh, are we up to?
No, well, let's
Right,
finish
let's
the
do
other
other,
ones and then
Oh, I forgot, which one are we missing?
we can do
The-
I just circled them.
The emergency and crisis
Crisis.
situations.
Yeah, let's do that, 8420.
20.
Okay, so let's see what's changed.
It said it created, I'm just reading from
Yeah,
the Strauss as
yes.
alert. So
I
it
have it as
created
well.
new statute sections, now provides all students and staff shall fully participate in each fire drill or school security drill conducted to the greatest extent practicable and ensure that participation does not pose a safety risk to any individual. The new language added requires current staff training for school security to be updated to include procedures for accommodating students with disabilities during drills and
Mhm.
emergency situations. NJSA App A 9-86 adds that the Commissioner of Education shall update the current drill guide and training materials disseminated to school districts to incorporate information on the needs of students with disabilities and include standard protocols and procedures for accommodating these students during drills and emergency situations. And it kind of goes on, so far that, we have to make sure that we are looking at everyone's 504 plan or
Yes.
their individualized healthcare plan or.
As well as their
individualized
IEPs.
plan. Right.
This is important, I'll tell you where this also came from.
Yeah.
So years ago, when a child had special needs and had an issue perhaps with the loud noise, with this or that, or whatever it might be, they were given notice and they were told and they didn't have to leave the classroom. Those days are over.
Right.
So no one is given notice of any kind.
Mm.
Nobody is aware when the drill is coming. If we have special needs, what we do is we make sure that the security guards, the teachers, of course, administration, paras, whoever it might be in the classroom, in the hallways, is alerted to those children. So for example, we had a child, oh my gosh, this might have been 7 years ago, who was allergic to the cold. So we, without saying anything, because we couldn't tell them about the drill, would make sure that jacket was available
Right.
for that child. And I do think this makes a lot of sense because although we want to be cognizant of our children's needs, especially, our children that may have issue with loud sounds, large groups. If God forbid this was an emergency situation, they have to participate. So I think this is excellent. I
Yeah.
like the revision a lot because it's something that we did start doing, by the way. So we're completely aware of it. And I work directly with Mr. Selby, and of course, Dr. Lehman, we're all involved, and we make sure that all the proper training is given to everybody. So that if you do have a child perhaps that maybe doesn't react well to the loud, the very loud sounds, how you would handle that child.
Mm.
How you would handle that child. But the language I do think needed to be changed because at one time years ago, they didn't participate in the drill.
Right.
This is going back though years.
Yeah, no, I
About
remember.
3 or
Right.
4, maybe, oh no, I'm saying 3, 4,
Yeah.
probably 5 years ago.
Right.
So this is what, I have a total understanding of what it means now. And we don't alert anybody.
There's also language in there for substitute teachers to get the training as well.
Which is great because we have the substitute training that occurs through our, it's directly under Dr. Lehman's purview, but with the staff developers. So this is very good. And I agree that it should be mandatory. So if we're comfortable with that, moving that forward,
Yeah,
our first read.
I think that's fine. It's really, it's mostly just mandatory language.
So let me circling so I can,
So just out of curiosity.
yes.
Because we no longer make any extra accommodations, if there's a student who is not as mobile that's on the second floor, I know like usually with fire drills, if there's an elevator, it's not allowed to be used and things like that. I guess how do we accommodate those students without being able to tell those students in advance that's
So-
happening?
That was a good conversation that we had previous. So we have to look into the policy to see when and if you are allowed to use, because, here's the thing, we want to make sure we follow the drills, we want to make sure we follow protocol, no one gets told in advance. But if we are also, because we had this conversation, I remember, of course, the MTA came forward and said, well, they're not going to carry them. This was the conversation we had. So I think the way it worked was they were permitted to use the elevator in that circumstance. I don't want to speak because I'm not in principal anymore and I don't want to be misconstrued.
Change day to day.
Correct. So what we will do is when we revisit this is a topic of conversation that we have at the leadership meeting, and then I get the specifics. I'll speak with Mr. Selby, and I bring Dr. Lehman involved as well to make sure to say, because we know, the principals are aware it's a drill. So if a child needs to be taken from the first floor to the second floor, from the second floor rather to the first floor, we let them use an elevator, but then the conversation comes,
What if it's
but
not?
what if it's not?
Right.
So these are the conversations we have. We do know that children that are completely, non-ambulatory, I think I'm saying it correctly, I want to make sure I'm not saying it backwards. They have been accommodated, I have to speak for the middle school because that's what I know personally. They have been accommodated where the teacher comes down to the first floor for that class. It happened just last year. It happened the year before. It'll happen again. Elementary wise, that is a good conversation to have. And this is an excellent conversation to be, to remind, we've been so fortunate,
Right.
but we can never assume.
Yeah.
We can never
Well,
assume.
most of our elementary schools are one floor. I mean, I only know, I can speak to a few of them. I know
Applegarth
Applegarth is
second
too.
floor, yes.
Are any others?
Applegarth has a
Berkeley
ramp,
Brook
if I'm not mistaken.
Okay,
Berkeley Brook, where? Yeah, Berkeley Brook and Applegarth, the same school.
right, okay. Yeah, I knew Apple Garth being a former middle
So,
school.
so my suggestion would be, of course, that it gets moved forward, but at the same time, I have my little list here, attendance,
It's good
website.
to add to.
Yes, and that's fine. No, that's what we want, because that's what, these meetings are supposed to serve a purpose, not just to check things off, to really, like, you had asked school boards to come in and do an evaluation. That's the whole point, to make sure that we're up to date and these questions come up. So I'll take care of that.
All right, moving along. So then there's policy and regulation 8467, which came from Strauss Esme, which is the firearms and weapons policy and regulation. And yeah, what they said, from Strauss Esme was it just revised to provide some additional details, including the administrative code regarding student possession and or use of firearms, weapons on grounds. The regulation has been completely rewritten to align with current language and statute and code. And then, let's see, the divisions are not a result of any new or revised statute of or administrative code. There are no new or additional requirements of school districts in the updates made to it. The reporting to law enforcement and handling of firearms and dangerous weapons requirements in the policy and regulation are aligned with the current statutes. That's just a lot of words that seem to be saying the same thing, but,
And the one thing I would reiterate on the very bottom is we constantly talk about, school officials should also consult the current memorandum agreement between the educational law officials. I'm not gonna get to the policy. We do that beautifully here and seamlessly. The relationship that, I currently have with the chief of police, as well as the relationship in general that we have through our director of security with the chief of police and all of the officers, and I want to make sure, I'll call them all officers because some of them are lieutenants and captains and so forth, is exceptional. We are very, very proud of the relationship that's been fostered here for many, many years. They're exceptional to work with, and we follow all of their lead. As far as if there is an investigation, we make sure to follow all protocol and procedure, and the way that we work with them is exceptional. I really like to give a shout out to them, that they're great. And I do like that they put that in here, because even though they make all these statements, they use the word, however, school enforcement, for additional guidance in these areas should always require, looking at the memorandum agreement, because it's important that we work, and we do.
right.
So I think that's excellent. So I definitely think those should be moved forward onto the, Board of Education, agenda.
Anyone have any?
Everybody agree? Making notes as we go
We'll
along,
move
circle
fast.
things.
Is that, I don't see.
That was from me.
Oh,
Um,
so can we table that for next?
yeah, there's.
Which one is that one?
8505.
The school nutrition.
Yeah, just very briefly, it's the 8505, which is school nutrition and wellness. We don't need to discuss it in detail.
We want to table to next month?
Right, I just wanted to share that it had come from a board member in another district at one of the legislative committee meetings. That they had found out that there was stuff in there that their district didn't have, that they were supposed to, like a wellness coordinator. So I had looked to see if that was something we had, and I didn't see it, but I thought maybe it could be a different term that we're using for that. I guess it would, be the food and nutrition.
The director of the
Right,
director,
so-
right? So if you'll notice, it says the principal of school wellness policy coordinator will coordinate information being disseminated. So I know that, Mrs. Cindy Sue Fowler, she coordinates and makes sure that we follow all the policy and the procedures, and then she provides all the information to the principals, and then the information is disseminated from the principals.
Okay.
So if we want to, so it says the principal of school wellness, but I'm comfortable if you want to table just so we can get details. And if
Right.
you'd like her to come and speak also, that's also very nice when we have that opportunity.
If we don't have a huge.
Yeah, we'll see.
From Esme.
I don't know. So I'm writing little notes now.
So we'll table that for next month.
85.
That's just a little background on where that came.
And then we'll invite
Um,
her and then talk about different programs that we do
Right.
and,
it'll also be good maybe just to do a very brief discussion about school, like the free and reduced lunch application,
Which we
especially now
talked about,
because
we
we
were gonna
have
add,
mandatory now.
yes. And it should be
So-
there. I worked with Mr.
I don't know if parents have had a
Oh,
lot
yeah, not yet. No, that's
so-
fine.
We're still in summer.
I know, I forget.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for reminding me.
We're actually pretty close. We just have been finalizing all those.
You know what I'm, we're working directly with Mr. Feldman.
Yeah,
Because we
so-
talked about that not
Yeah.
last time, the time before that.
Right.
Right.
With the media release form.
Exactly,
Right. So
exactly.
we're gonna have them fill it out.
You can access your schedule.
Right, fill it out.
We also feel like you can't go any further on this page until you check it.
So we're gonna do it the same where you have to either fill it out or just opt out of filling it out.
Correct.
It's a nice control point that the district has annually to
Right.
make sure that we get into next calendar.
Okay. Okay, so I have my notes.
And then this is the free and reduced lunch. It's not on here, it just sort of came out of the school nutrition policy that we were discussing, which came from legislation that was passed at the state earlier. So that's just what that was about.
So-
P 9181, that was the last one from Strauss Esme.
Yes.
Which basically just adds additional language, for volunteer athletic coaches and or co-curricular advisors. That they're screened for, tuberculosis. This is the language that was changed. The optional language has been removed from the policy and a statement has been added indicating that volunteers will be screened for tuberculosis in accordance with the current guidance for tuberculosis. So it's sort of similar, I think, to what we had last month, but
Yes.
now it's for volunteers. To just make sure that the district is in compliance with the state guidelines.
And we are.
For testing.
And putting in there, they have to participate in mandated trainings.
Yep.
And then there's the optional section at the bottom.
Right.
You pick
Well, we do require them.
substitute teachers.
That's correct. So just to let you know, so the way we vetted this, once we received this information, Ms. Alinsky, who's exceptional, I don't know, Rashima, went ahead and forwarded it, so we always forward it to the people on it. So the Director of Human Resources, and then to Mr. Barandika. So when we forwarded, we already require, we don't let them to be alone in a team. There has to be a paid coach around. Volunteers are approved by the Board of Education. They fill out an application. They get their TB testing. They get a criminal history record. The volunteers are not required to have a substitute teacher, but the paid coaches are. So that's the only difference. I think that's something that we can, if it's something we want to move forward and make more stringent, but when they volunteer, we're so happy to have them. But we don't allow them to be alone, and I think that's the key. So if they were a substitute teacher, then of course they are a substitute teacher is a teacher. But in this case, they're not. So that's what we originally had. So as we look at this language, let me go back to the pages. Superintendent or designee will prepare. The superintendent of schools or designee will be responsible, so that stays, and they have some language taken out. And then we can have optional. We don't have to check any of it. That's what makes it optional, or we can check all of it.
Right.
If my suggestion would be, obtain a criminal history record.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
agree, so we check that. Sign a waiver for workman's compensation required by the school district's insurance company.
That's fine. It's,
I'm
it's required, right?
I'll look into that right now.
Yeah.
And so if you allow me to look into it and then slip it on the board.
Yeah.
Once I get, okay, so that'll be confirmed, I'm gonna write confirm with HR, how's that? And then, the other, I don't know why they don't have the TV in here. I'm looking for it.
It's not, yeah, it's not it's not as,
It has
it's not
it
considered
right,
optional because it's mandatory.
right,
Oh,
it's
so we don't
mandatory,
need it
but
there.
they
Okay,
have
good.
it.
Have the-
So with your permission to move this forward, Mrs. Alvarez and,
Yes.
Ms. Ratner, and of course, Mrs. Fabiano, Mrs. Ratner, rather, I would like to just check off obtain a criminal history, not possess a New Jersey substitute at this time.
Right.
Regular coaches that are paid must be a substitute teacher. And then sign a waiver for workman's comp. You will only see that checked off once I confirm with human resources. And I do, or Ms. Allen, because a lot of times I go through the business administrator. If that's required by to be covered under workman's comp, I'll ask both of them, then
Right.
it will be checked. If you
Right.
don't see it checked, then that means that it is not required.
Right, and honestly, I think it might be okay to put on there because it just says if required, so that,
Oh, so even better, I don't have to even check, how's
yeah,
that?
if it's not required, then we just don't
Then
have to
we
do
don't have
it.
to do it. Perfect. So that'll be moved forward too.
All right,
So, school nutrition is next month.
yeah.
This is so,
We also, Ms. Alvarez, I don't know if you had heard the conversation, we discussed the organizational chart. So we're gonna bring that to personnel first, but
Okay.
just for public awareness. There was, a couple of discussions about the organizational chart as well as there are current positions that
Correct.
are on there right now that we no longer have in the district, are new
Changes.
positions.
Okay.
Just wanted to review it, make sure that we're, we have everything we're supposed to have and see where we are in comparison to some of the surrounding districts, perhaps, possibly get, recommendation from the attorney if he feels like what we're doing is similar to what he feels school district should have. So we'll table that for next month, and hopefully it can be discussed tomorrow.
it will be. It will be. It's on the personnel agenda and there are some changes. So you're absolutely right. There is one thing for sure underneath the assistant superintendent. We've also had some changing, if you remember, in the director of information systems because there were some positions that we changed.
Right, and then there's also now we have the director of athletics.
Transportation, correct. So it definitely needs to be updated.
Right.
So what we can do is we can have the conversation tomorrow and then for purposes of September, I can have it updated with whatever we discuss in personnel. And then it can reflect, and then of course we can have a further conversation if it's updated enough, because, I worked on this, and Mr. Moraldo also reached out to other districts to see. I will like to say aloud that we are much more administrative light than other districts, which is a good thing for fiduciary responsibility. We have less administrative post positions, postings, positions, whatever, however you like to call them, posts or positions. A lot of districts have like
Right.
2, 3 different assistant superintendents.
I know East Brunswick has one less now, because that was a big thing.
Yes, that was it. So, with your permission, we'll table it, and I'll be happy to go back over, working with Samralda, because he does the boxes for me. He does a great job.
Do you-
Yeah.
No, that one's actually done,
Which expression of Canada?
that one, it'd probably be easier in Canva.
Yeah, I think maybe that we're making some changes, because I don't even think your position's on here.
You can add yourself, your own box.
I don't,
Yeah,
it needs to be, because
did that
I
before.
did it, last.
I don't see a box.
Right, that was done in like January of 2022, I
The
think.
one that's on the website is
So-
correct.
Correct, yeah, but we'll be happy, so I'll print out that one and then go through it with your permission, so just, may I summarize what I'm getting approved and what we're moving forward?
Sure, we have one more thing.
Oh, what would I miss?
So
Oh,
there's
the AI,
No.
two more things.
Well, the AI, we can table AI for next
Which
month,
is-
because I
which
feel
is
like that's
fine,
gonna be a good discussion.
and it's gonna be a really good discussion, because in addition to Strauss Esme's requirements,
Mhm.
we have our own, I'll call it resident expert, and we can even invite her.
Dr. Azell.
Correct,
Yeah.
because she's gone to a lot of, I went to the one conference, which was excellent, but I went more from the educational. So she really had a good conference on it. She just also went, I think it was, I don't know if it was New Jersey, NJPSA, I think she just went to a training, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct,
New Jersey
and we've
Principals and
received,
Supervisors.
we've been receiving updates almost in real time.
Mhm.
There's been a lot of work done in the academic and even the higher ed communities this summer. And it's just kind of starting to disseminate to the public school
Right.
districts. So my guess is that the next really 4 to probably 6 weeks are going to be pretty rich with information and some new guidance.
Right.
And
Everyone's just trying to catch up.
And also
I know-
on there, it says something about assigning an AI coordinator. So that's
Yes.
something to also think about.
And maybe, you know what, maybe I could just broach that conversation in personnel. I don't know if I have to
If we
update
need
it.
to assign one, we.
Or do we want to wait to have, I'm just thinking, should we put the cart before the horse or the horse?
Well, maybe we should look at the policy.
So maybe, you know what, that'll be a conversation for personnel in September.
This is also going to be a very well-examined topic at the upcoming conference.
Right, workshop.
Yes, yeah, New Jersey School Boards. Okay, so while you're doing this, I'm writing myself.
Yeah. And then they actually,
Facilities.
right, yeah, they actually, they have it as one of the county meetings. That's the topic. I forget if it's October or December, but there'll be information there as well.
Okay.
So just the last one that we're bringing back again, because it's our favorite policy and regulation, is 7510, which is use of school facilities.
So I'm bringing this up again because a member of the community had reached out.
To me as well.
And I just felt that it would warrant a discussion
Okay.
so that we can share, the policy. A member of the community has reached out saying that they would like to use our facilities, but are unable to afford the cost of the usage of our facilities.
Right.
So I just wanted to bring it forth for a discussion so that we.
So to my understanding, we don't have a class of user that doesn't pay a usage fee but pays the cost, right? Because class 2 users and class 3 users pay a facility usage fee.
So this particular group, which is a religious organization, one of the
Right.
Chabads that are here in town, Rabbi Z reached out to myself and I believe as well to Mrs. Fabiano, and we wanted to handle it appropriately because we think everything needs to be handled the same. So and I did leave him the voice message if he's watching. He did not answer my call, and it might have been because Shabbos was coming. But he did not call me back. So I think one of the things that he expressed, and I'm just going to speak for him if I may, and you correct me, Mrs. Fabiano, if I don't say it correctly. Well, my understanding is we want to treat him equal to we treat any other organization that would not be able to utilize our facilities without incurring the fees. The only comments that he made was the difference between him perhaps and other organizations during the high holy days, because they are observant, they must be able to walk the distance. This is, am I right? This is what he shared? So the difference is, let's say we utilize any other organization, whether it be Christian or Muslim or Hindu, whatever it might be, they would incur the same cost as everybody else because they are not one of our shared service agreement. In his case, what he's trying to share is he can't afford it, and maybe a church or a Muslim organization or mosque can't afford it either, but he is limited in the access of what he can utilize because he is in walking distance to the middle school and high school. And after sundown, when this service is over, you can't get in the car if you're observant. So, I am not saying that that should or shouldn't. I'm only giving an explanation of why he felt that he was different, that his congregation was different. That is the rationale of why he feels there's a difference, because my immediate response, to another board member who brought it to me was, he's not any different than any other organization. That was my immediate response.
And I feel like I agree. I think and that's kind of where we feel like we're stuck, right? Because we want to help, of course, but also we're kind of bound to the policy, because if we make an exception for one,
Mhm.
And I mean,
then we have to make an exception for all.
and like, I can speak, having a mom who wouldn't walk, or who wouldn't drive on high holidays as well. We had to walk an hour each way.
Yeah.
So like, I get it. She grew up in Brooklyn. I still remember walking over there. I get it. But I think that it's a slippery slope. I know that like the congregation I'm currently in, you pay an additional high holiday.
Correct.
To cover some of these expenses. I also, I want to be respectful of that maybe I think they had been using this before and then we changed.
I think they've been utilizing it for many, many years, because I know that the other, because it's two different Chabads here, so the other Chabad on Applegarth Road has their own, they used to use the facilities. I know as a principal of middle school, we used to get prepared for them.
Just a quick question. Is it because they can't afford it?
Yes, they cannot afford it, so our issue, and I guess the reason why, I mean, I didn't say this, but I'm going to assume that perhaps he's exhausted utilizing other places, but he's limited in the places he can utilize because of the walking distance of being able to walk back. But we explained, because I'm just to bring for the public that's looking at it, so it's page 1 of 13, and it's under the regulation 8420, it says, class 2 users may use school district facilities with payment of an application fee. They are charged custodial, security, and service costs.
Right.
And class 2 includes religious organizations. So right there in the policy,
yeah.
it applies to this congregation. He's asking us to have the conversation as a committee of would we make that change, and his rationale, to my understanding, was that he is different because he can't go and say, well, I'll utilize this because it's cheaper. I can go, I'll use, if I may, a Christian church. Perhaps a Christian church needed the facility and they didn't have the money, so they reached out to three other places, and they were cheap enough so that they did it because they get in the car and go home. He's saying that he's limited in his choices of where he can have his services because they must be able to walk the distance.
But, I mean, people in this community who walk, I mean, they live all over the community, so he's more or less talking about just his needs. I mean, it's not just the entire communication.
Right, because they're not all.
Right,
I mean, he must have a congregation
Yes.
of how many people?
I
40,
have-
50?
I have no idea.
If you had 50, let's just assume for conversation.
Mhm.
If you had a congregation of 50 people, and let's say half of them walk,
Mhm.
okay? He's not gonna get a location that's gonna be agreeable to everyone, the whole congregation. He's looking for something that's agreeable to his needs.
No, I don't know about it's his needs. I think
it's
I think it's always utilized prior to us increasing our fees. Am I correct? It's my understanding he's always utilized
The
this.
fees, so it's
Yeah.
basically the fees.
Well, right,
Yeah.
Well, I think it's
We
both.
increased
I think it's the fees, yes, the fees, and it's
I-
and being able to walk to, they're asking to use the middle school.
Right, I think in the past, so both organizations, because I remember on the high holy days as the principal, because we used to have to make sure it was cleaned out and prepared, and we do have half days when the holidays start, so it works out well. So the middle school and high school is always utilized. One group used the high school and the other group used the middle school. It's my understanding now the group that used the high school has their own
Yes.
facility on Applegarth Road.
Yeah.
So, and I'm making absolutely no recommendation either way. We all agree that it be brought to the committee. It's really, it is a
I just
committee
think it has to
decision.
be consistent.
Yeah.
It's not our issue.
I
That's
agree
his
with
fault.
it being consistent.
Not our issue.
Right. So, he reached out to you as well, right?
Yeah, so I said that I obviously was good. I wanted to bring this to the committee for discussion because I can't make that decision
Right.
without, bringing it to, here. So if we are agreeing, consistency is key. And unfortunately, we can't really make an exception.
Right. I mean, the only thing I could suggest is because there's really no difference between class 2 and class 3. It's like, it's just a difference in the dollar amount, but it's really not even that much. So if we wanted to look at who is class two.
He's
who is
already class two.
You know what I'm saying, but then change it where they cover their costs, so we're not losing money, but not necessarily making money. That, and like, for example, for-profit groups, I would think they
Should be
should
class
pay, right? That might be something, they pay more, but it's not that much
But if we're
more.
already talking about money,
Well, so that's why, like, I'm saying, do we want to change? what
No,
class
notice
two
it's not
is?
that. I think it has to do with who lives in Monroe. Class two and class three is, we're not about paying more. Class two and class three is about who lives in Monroe versus who doesn't. See the difference?
Right, but I mean, that's so tricky, because like, I mean, I go to a temple, right, but my temple's not in Monroe, but I'm in Monroe, so like, if
Doesn't
I
make a
go in the
difference.
facility, I just,
Doesn't-
right,
It would be, that temple would then would be a class three.
right,
So I mean,
yeah.
okay, so Mrs. Fabiano, you'll be reaching back out?
I will reach back out to him and explain.
And please let him know that I left him a voicemail.
Yes, I will explain exactly what we said here. I'll refer to him to watch the
Yes,
video that
right.
we discussed.
Because we're very respectful of everybody's,
Yes.
I mean, and we have, you know, we all represent many different
Right.
religions and cultures and so forth, and class two, so class two and class three is outside, so he's being treated as class two inside Monroe,
Right.
so it is a little less, it is less money.
Yep.
Right.
So,
Just really quick, looking at this, just because of what happened at our last meeting, and I appreciate the update that you gave us, from Millie,
Just-
from the security.
Oh.
you like what I said?
Yes, but I just, it raised something in my mind that since we're reviewing this regulation,
Mhm.
I know that with class ones, they do not have to pay any fee for.
Yes, 'cause they're shared
custodial
service, correct.
security and all of that.
There is no security,
Um,
there is not security necessarily every day.
but then, because then the policy states that there must be security.
Well,
So is that like, are we liable?
No.
then? Because
So
the
we had a
policy says there
detailed
should
meeting.
be.
Ms. Allen, myself, the prior board president, the mayor, and, I believe the attorney was present as well, and I think there was another attorney present, and everybody was very clear that we do not have the financial capability to pay, to foot the bill. We just can't have security for every time they have an activity. The conversation that I remember clearly was that, and we worked very, very well with Ms. Lang, excellent relationship, is that she would make sure that whomever her supervisors are of that particular activity, were you there?
No, but
No.
I was in the debrief.
Okay, so I know, because you're shaking your head, yes, so you're making me feel good that I'm remembering this correctly.
No,
Actually, I do remember you actually where
We
you.
were visiting this.
Yes, and what happened was, so we were very clear that, and they also said they could not afford it as well, so the conversation went to, well, let's be consistent that when you have, I'm gonna always use basketball because it's such a big deal, basketball rec, they would make sure that the door would be locked behind them. The person who was running the basketball that day would be aware that they would have to let the people in individually. If this is a conversation we want to have, this is a conversation that we need to just,
I just, like, I'm looking at it, says, like, in our regulation, a minimum of 2 school custodians must be on duty, a minimum of 1 security officer
But that's not
must
correct.
be on duty. But well, it doesn't say it's not for these things. So we should add, like, I think there's a liability concern where it's saying that it must be there. We're saying they don't have to pay for it.
no, we didn't say they don't have to pay for it. We would have loved for them to have to pay for it. They said that they couldn't afford to pay for it, and we, it was part of.
It says that because they're a class 1 user, that they don't have to pay those fees in the regulation. So that's why, like, I think that
This is,
a longer conversation we can have right now, but if we're saying that they don't need to pay for these things, and then we're saying in the regulation that these things are required,
I think
We need to-
if I may have a conversation,
yeah.
perhaps I can have a conversation with the board leadership.
Mhm.
I think it would be an appropriate conversation, and then, we would include Dr. Lehman and we'll include Ms. Allen. And I think we can have a conversation, because this was all centered around the agreement that came up with Apple Lot. This was
Right.
this was a very detailed conversation that occurred with attorneys present. And
Right,
I think you're absolutely right, it should not be ignored, but I think perhaps we should have a meeting and a conversation and then bring it back to the policy.
but there are
And-
other organizations that aren't the township that are class 1 too, so it would have to be careful with that as well.
I agree. So I think if we can have a separate meeting and conversation, and then
All right.
maybe not bring it back in September, maybe October, because we need some time to
We were not
discuss
gonna
it.
have 75-10 in September, but it's.
No,
So, I know that, Ms. Payne is waiting.
Right, yeah.
May I, so I want to,
All right.
I know that Miss Alvarez is listening, so I want
I
to
am.
confirm. So this is what we are approving for a first read on our actual board agenda. 5337, service animals revised. 5350, student suicide prevention, mandatory revised. Policy and regulation. Nope. I have 7510, that's done. Getting rid of that. Oh, God.
Well, we're gonna have
The regular. Yes, we are going to have that on there because we talked about the monies.
For a second read.
For a second read.
75-10,
Should be a second read.
Oh, right, we're gonna have it on the agenda.
Yes,
Right,
I'm talking agenda right now.
right.
Emergency and crisis situations, policy 8420, and then, policy and, wait, let this one out, 1 second. We have 8467, policy and, regulation for the firearms, and then policy 9181 for the volunteer coaches with those two areas checked. That is what I am letting, Ms. Zelinski know needs to be on there, and the only one that's on there for a second read is policy and regulation 7510.
Weren't there
Did I miss
edits
something?
that we did last month that were?
Well, that's, no, yeah, I'm not talking.
Yeah, they're not on our agenda, on our committee agenda.
Alvarez, you do a wonderful job. You're working with, I know I'm on there, so we'll all be on the same page because she has that already. I didn't,
Yes.
like, that's like a given.
Right, okay, yeah.
But 7510 we keep on talking about, so I said it was a second read.
7510 is
Yeah.
taking a rest for now.
All right.
And I have my notes, attendance, fire drills, talking about golf fit children that are wheelchair bound, talking about our website for support of suicide information. And then, 8505, I think it might be nice to invite her if we're gonna have time. And we'll talk about that. And I think I have all my notes. Sound good?
Great.
All right, that is the end of policy. Thank you for Patty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Elza, do you-
Hi, Gail.